So I've already shot everything else. I thought I'd just give a quick summary, if you don't want to watch the whole video, of why the main reason I think that Season 2 is better than Season 1. Look, I feel like Season 1, Kilgrave, top 3 villains, I'd say three-way tie for top villains in any of these Netflix Marvel shows. He was better in Season 1 than any aspect of Season 2 by a mile. But I feel like Season 1 wasn't a great TV show that made me feel like this could be a show with many great seasons. I feel like beyond Kilgrave and him killing people in these brutal ways and him having these great interactions with Jessica, and Jessica being a compelling protagonist, good flirtation with Luke Cage, there wasn't much else that I really feel like there was there. Jerry, I've never liked her less on any of these shows than I thought her storyline was awful. The divorce storyline. Malcolm was hateable. I didn't like him at all. Trish, she was a good character, but she got really no arc. She really just only seemed to exist in relation to Jessica, and that was the whole problem. It just felt like the Jessica Jones show just all the time, and it just felt like any kind of season of TV we got, it was just going to be her bantering with people, intimidating people, and there was going to never really be any sense of a TV show with different arcs. This season, I feel like they did all this legwork of setting up these different characters. Trish got a great arc, and I can't wait to see what they do with her character. I can't wait to see her with powers and fighting, whether she's evil, good. I love what they did with Trish. I love what they did with Jerry. Gave her a great arc. Malcolm was great. Malcolm's a character I'm excited now almost every character that we saw, I'm excited to see where things go. And in comparison to Season 1, where I said, well, Kilgrave was a great villain, we got these great moments, but I really didn't see it being a show that I was going to really like, or a show that was going to be good, and not as excited for Season 2 as I was for other of these Marvel shows. Compare it to now, after watching Season 2, couldn't be more excited for Season 3. I want to know lots of stuff that happens, and I feel like now I understand these characters better, and I really understand Jessica, and I understand Trish, and the differences between them, and what motivates them. So very exciting going forward. That's the main reason. Now I'll start the video. So first thing I'll say, I've watched all the Netflix Marvel seasons, and I don't think me watching those helped enhance the experience of watching this at all. Not even Jessica Jones' first season. It helped a bit, but not as much as you'd think. So I think they've done a great job at making this very entry level. So even if you have no experience with any of these Marvel Netflix seasons, I think you can watch this and enjoy it almost as much as someone who's watched all of them. Now, comparing this to Season 1, what I thought it did better was really fleshing out the psychology of different characters and really giving different supporting characters their own arcs, which I think is really important, because Jessica, she has a very distinctive, very abrasive personality at times, and that's why she's so great in a team dynamic like Defenders. But when it's all about her, it's just the Jessica Jones show constantly, it can be a little much. And I think that Season 1, it was really just a great protagonist and a great villain going head to head for 13 episodes. Here it was more of a TV show where you had different characters, different arcs, and in some sense I really liked how episode 7 of this season compared to last season, I really didn't know which direction it was going to go, and you had lots of different elements, lots of different balls in play, versus Season 1, you hit episode 7 or 8, there was just one central storyline, there was just one conflict, you knew how it was going to turn out. So really I'd give the advantage to this one as far as kind of unpredictability at that midway point. And not only do I think they did a better job with supporting characters, fleshing them out a little more, giving them arcs, I think with Jessica we saw more sides to her, definitely more of a vulnerable side, and some growth over the season. So I thought that was great as well. I will say a major difference from Season 1 that I don't think was a good difference was the tone. Now I feel like Season 1 had this great, very dark tone that I think was almost completely lost in this season. It felt very goofy, melodrama at times, over the top. It was just a completely different tone, and there were one or two moments later on in this season where I felt that they got that darkness back, but they were very few and far between. For the most part, it was a completely different tone, so any kind of sense of a distinct Jessica Jones feel, I think, was lost. And I think that this season is actually underrated by critics, and the first season's overrated. And the reason for this is, I think that the first 5 episodes, which is what critics get, and really most critics, they just watch those 5 episodes, and all the people that write about it and all the articles that are written, most of those people haven't seen the whole show. They've just seen those 5 episodes, so you can't overstate just how much the 5 episodes at the start really matter. And I think in season 1, the first 5 episodes, you could say those are some of the strongest, and looking at that 5 episode chunk, much, much stronger than the last 5 episodes, let's say. This season, I think the first 5 episodes were by far the weakest, so it was a complete flip, and that's why, unfortunately, I think this one's actually going to be underrated while the first one was overrated. And if I had to describe how I feel this season went, first 5 episodes, very, very weak. I can't overstate how much I did not think it was even a good show. Not forget disappointing from season 1 by those standards, just a bad show for the first 5 episodes. Slowly starts to pick up steam, great reveal, and a great direction. I think they took things around episode 6 or 7. Great episode 7, episode 8, great episodes, really started to build some momentum and steam. And for a brief fleeting moment, you got the sense of just what this show could be if it was firing on all cylinders. And at one point it was, and it was great. And then I feel like things slowly started unraveling, different elements started not working as well, and it kind of petered out towards the end. But I think it made it till the end and stuck the landing. I think the ending was very good, so you were left with a somewhat frustrating season, but I'd say didn't end as badly as season 1. Last couple episodes were absolutely awful. This season, last couple episodes, very disappointing, very running out of steam, but I think unlike the last one, they managed to get us to the ending. We had enough momentum, we made it to the finish line, and like I say, good ending, and it stuck the landing. And I feel like for the first 5 episodes, we had a mix of really bad, almost self-parody noir. We had bad detective work, just very boring, mundane detective story. We had the most boring origin story of a superhero ever being investigated. We had some terrible superhero fight and superhero power moments, and then a few things that worked: the mother-daughter stuff, the sister relationship, the romance, the witty banter back and forth. And then I feel like around mid-season, episode 6 or 7, it completely switched, and they shifted the show to all of its strength: the dysfunctional family relationships, the relationships between people, the psychology, characters being flawed and damaged, and their personality, and fleshing that out. And we moved away from the detective work, the noir elements, all that stuff that I feel like they add because they want to be true to the source material. And what is Jessica Jones? Superhero, private investigator. I don't know if there's this noir vibe, but that's how they've interpreted it. And I feel like they just do that because they feel like they have to, but all the people involved in the show, it's not what their strong suit is, it's not where they shine. So I feel like as soon as they move away from that and actually just double down on what they really want to make a show about, this is when it's a great show. And when the show's doing the detective work, the superhero stuff, it just feels like the people behind the show, those aren't the genres they like. That's not what they grew up reading or watching. Those aren't what they're passionate about. They just happen to have found themselves within that genre of that source material, so they're just telling the stories. They're just using that genre, but really they're trying to work in the stories that they want to write about, which is great. I think you should write about the stories you want to write about, so I just wish that they'd just back off on the superhero stuff, the detective stuff that just, it doesn't work, or at least bring in people who actually care about those things. Bring in someone who grew up on these cop shows and courtroom dramas, and bring in these people who do care about these genres, rather than you've just maybe seen a few of them, just kind of copying and pasting and not really understanding the genres you're working with. Now, anyways, I do think that this show did a better job of, I think a lot of times with these binging shows where you're going to watch 13 episodes all at once, like I just did, oftentimes just having in the last couple episodes or throughout, you can have, Stranger Things does this, where each episode just has one twist, one reveal. And in a Stranger Things episode, sometimes it's not always a great episode, and it's slow and there's not a lot going on, but every episode, kind of like clockwork, there's a big reveal and a big twist that keeps ramping you up towards the finale. And Stranger Things has perfected it by, you watch a season of Stranger Things, it just goes by like nothing. Now, to be fair, Stranger Things is shorter, but I feel like this season versus season 1 did a better job of, as we got to those last couple episodes, each episode had at least one big shocking reveal, great moment, and I think that helped the end of the season not feel like such a slog. However, that's a good TV show. A great TV show, I feel, is when you have an episode towards the end where all these different threads and all these different great reveals, they start happening together at the same time, and they start converging and occurring at the same time. So I like that they did one step where at least we're getting some of these reveals later in the season, but the next step would be, rather than spreading 4 great reveals or 4 great moments out over 4 episodes, you would just either have more great moments or compress your season and have an episode where, like, imagine how great it would be if some of these great moments we got towards the end of the season, they all happened at the same time, one after another, and you just have that great moment of TV. So I think that would be the next step of what you'd be aiming for. Talk about the noir. So what is noir? Noir is dark, dim settings, an anti-hero who's jaded, cynical about the world, goes on these monologues, voiceovers are a big part of it, alcoholism, casual sex, again, dark, dim settings, jazz music, so all those elements. And I feel like both seasons, they start out so heavy on the noir vibe, and they try to get this noir vibe, and then it just falls by the wayside as it goes. And in this season, in season 1, I think they did nail it. Initially, for the first couple episodes, I think they really did get a noir vibe, and then it fell apart. Here, I think they never really got it. It just seemed really, really bad. And I just highlight the difference when Jessica Jones has banter with people and she's doing quips and she's going back and forth with the one-liners. One, the writing I think is excellent. Two, her delivery of it is great. You compare that to the monologues, and we had so many of these voiceover monologues where she's talking about philosophy and worm food, and it just, the writing for one is just bad, her delivery of it is bad, and it's just, again, this is where it starts to get, I felt like this season sometimes it felt like a parody, like a self-parody of Jessica Jones. Like if College Humor put out a sketch, you know, she's staring at the black and white photograph, she circles something on it, then she swigs back the alcohol right to the ceiling, and then the generic saxophone riff plays where she says some awful cliched quote that has nothing to do with really her character and her actual philosophy. So just the noir element was really bad on this. Now let's talk about her being a sleuth and a private eye. That's a big part of noir as well. But last thing I'll say before that, and again, I compare the monologues to the quips and the banter, but also when, for instance, Jessica says to someone, call me a dog again, compare me to a dog, something you can kick, and she gives this great line and this great dialogue, great delivery, and again, it's just, those lines just can't help, you just notice the difference that when she's giving these cynical monologues about existence and philosophizing, it just rings so hollow versus when she's actually talking about stuff that I feel like her character and then also the writers, the people behind the show actually would say. And now for the detective work, we see a lot in the first 5 episodes. Absolutely horrible. It consists of us seeing her staring intently at a laptop, her creeping into a room, creeping down a hallway while suspenseful music plays, and this happens again. We see Jessica do it, then we see Trish do it, then we see Jessica and Trish do it together. And if you're working in a genre that has so much history as, you know, a wrong side of the tracks or a jaded detective trying to hunt down this cover-up and this conspiracy, that's so tried and true. There's so much there. You've either got to nail it and really, really nail it, or you've got to do something fresh and original with it. If you just do something that's a huge trope and a cliche and you do it poorly, which is what it was here, it didn't even feel like detective always. It felt like a bad horror movie a lot of the time, where you just have a woman creeping down a hallway while suspenseful music plays. The actual detective work, the only thing I can think of is when there was the wig and the wig didn't come off, so they knew it was a good wig, so they went to the good wig places. Like, just, there's ways you can make someone seem like a really good detective, and shows do it all the time, where you see the detective and you say, wow, look at how that person was able to put together those clues. I'm really impressed by that. This was just basic, find something with a name on it and then go to the building that's named that. It was just basic following clues. You never got a sense that Jessica or Trish or anyone was actually a good detective, and it was unfortunate. And then the other thing that I don't think works, when Jessica is intimidating people, I think she's great. I think she's great when you see people underestimate her and disrespect her, and she just very quickly cuts him down with a quick one-liner and then a quick punch and just knocks him down. I think she's great at that, and those are great scenes. When you have any kind of extended fight scene, or even her running, she did this a couple times where she, even just her running after a train, you can't even like pull off just seeing her sprint and actually look like she's sprinting. It looks like she's slowly, awkwardly running. When she catches up to the Wiz, it was so bad. So I think that that's one of the weakest parts, is the actual, when you try to turn her into an action hero and you try to get these choreographed set pieces where it's like a spectacle, her fighting, it's really bad when it's just her talking down to someone, cutting someone down, being a badass. I think she pulls that off really well. So just stick to that, where her being this intimidating figure, when she actually gets in a kind of fight or has to do athleticism, really doesn't work. Okay, now I'm going to talk about spoilers. That'll be the rest of the video. We'll have spoilers. Now, if I've seemed kind of down on the show, it's because I've been talking non-spoilers, so I've mostly been talking about stuff of the first 5 episodes, which, like I say, was pretty weak. But now we get to episode 6, 7. I'm going to talk about one more negative, but it is a spoiler. Last negative was what they did with Simpson. I thought, really mishandled what they did with him in season 1. It was worse in this season, just having him come back. He was awful in the brief time we see him, and then killing him off. Very disappointing, and again, that was part of the first 5 episodes that I really didn't like. But now we move to episode 6, 7, so let me talk about that a little bit. Now, for me, the best embodiment of how we had this switch from what I thought was all the worst elements of the show to all the best was we get the first meeting of Jessica with her mom, where she doesn't know, and they're having this talk in this dark place and hushed tones about this criminal conspiracy. And again, it's like something we've seen countless times, a detective trying to track down this conspiracy, but just done in such a worse way. And then we have this little scuffle and her fleeing in this terrible chase scene, terrible superhero power scene, and it's just the worst elements of the show. And then we get the reveal, which not only is it a great, shocking reveal that it's her mother, but also it shifts it from, like I say, just a really bad detective story to a great, fascinating character study, mother-daughter relationship study, and really just sets the tone for how we're really going to delve into these family dynamics and these sisterly dynamics and just have a great rest of the season. And let me say right off the bat, I thought that Alyssa, Jessica's mother, I wouldn't say she was a villain, but I think she was a great presence on the show that really added some superhero stakes that I think Jessica just wasn't ever able to give. You really did feel, one, just from her size. She's a large actress. She had nice long hair in a lot of her scenes. The way they shot her with the camera, she's a very physical, imposing presence. The scenes they had of her kind of snapping, even setting the tone with her banging the piano early on, very chilling. You really did get the sense of just this caged beast, this mutant that could just unleash unspeakable power. And for the first time, I felt in some first scenes like we were watching something with superheroes, and it was again that stakes and that kind of thing where all the humans are kind of scared of this great powerful weapon. And now so many other parts of the show start really clicking, and Trish, who has always been, I think, a very good, likable character, but a bit boring. This building her up as a stable, boring, likable character, it really pays off when you start to see her deterioration, and it's just fascinating. One, you see her addiction and her substance abuse problems and how they're similar but very different at a fundamental level from Jessica's. Now, with Jessica, it seems like she has abandonment issues, never has really felt belonging, seems to have problems of self-worth and self-esteem, and that's what leads to her issues. With Trish, it's this fundamental fear of being ordinary and not being special, and it's a kind of narcissism from her mother being very overbearing, a helicopter parent trying to live vicariously through her. We have this heartbreaking scene of Trish's mom, her phone ringer is the old theme song from her child's show, just again living in the past, putting all her dreams on her kid, and how that screwed Trish up so much for life. And I love how we get the comparison between Jessica, who's never really wanted powers and has really deep down only ever wanted just normal, stable family life and maybe a friend, and really just wants a normal existence. She says at one point, very late in the season, I just want to exist. And then you compare that with Trish, who she's both so jealous of superpowers and also fascinated by them and wants them, and how she can use superpowers as a kind of replacement addiction for, you know, she used to have a substance abuse addiction. Now she can just use kind of superpowers and that feeling of being powerful and being important as kind of a substitute for that. And what I love is when Trish talks about saving the world and all these highfalutin ideals, it just rings so hollow because it feels like Trish is not actually passionate about these issues. She doesn't really understand them. She doesn't really care. She just pretends to because she thinks she should, or it allows her to feel important, pretending to care about these issues. And with Trish, the tragedy is she has this ambition to be special and be great, but really she's maybe above average, maybe slightly above average, but she's not brilliant and she doesn't understand these issues. And even her douchey boyfriend, the war reporter, she can't even really do what he does. And when she feels insecure and says, oh, you're this great war reporter and I'm just a former child star, to some extent that's true. She's not able to do what he does and actually go to war zones and actually care about issues. And you get this heartbreaking scene when she goes to the job interview that she only got because she took drugs and artificially enhanced. And then, you know, that line that the agent says, oh, whatever you do, you know, whatever allowed you to do what you did, just keep doing it. That classic addict thing where you get in over your head from enhanced abilities and then you have to keep using those just to maintain your position. So when she's at her new job and you see her just struggling because she just can't be this ideal image that because of her mom she just needs herself to be, and it's just tragic. And it's great when her boss says, well, just speak honest, like what do you care about, what do you want to say? Trish, she can't talk about the things that would actually allow her to reach people and really help people talk about her own issues with substance abuse or with her mom. If she really opened up and was honest about her less than perfect flawed life, she could probably actually be passionate and reach people, but because she has this image that she wants to project, she can't actually be honest about her flaws. Now, again, I love how we had this build up seeing her over last season and beginning of this season very, very composed, and then we get this image of her as very composed and kind of in a contrast to Jessica as kind of a mess. And then it's so delightful when we see in flashbacks to her partying days, her being a mess then, but then also her kind of deteriorating in the present day. It's just this great contrast, and we see great acting, great costume work, and great makeup, and just everything's great. We see such a range of her over the season. For me, she was such a surprise standout for me. A moment where she realizes she's only with Griffin as this kind of power couple thing, and it's not really love, it's more that she, rather than really loves him, admires him and kind of wants to be him. So it's this great narcissist problem. And now I loved when she got together with Malcolm because I really didn't know how that was going to play out. It ended up not being super impactful, but when it happened, it was just a great moment. And Malcolm's he was so irritating on season 1. I didn't like him at all. This season, he couldn't have been more likable right from the start. I loved everything about his arc, almost everything he said. Even he had a horrible line at one point. He said something like, I feel like I'm the only one who's real around here, but he'd been such a gem all season. He actually pulled off this line. I loved his whole arc. I loved him getting together with Trish, getting betrayed by her. I loved him cleaning himself up and kind of trying to link up with Jerry and kind of remove himself from Jessica, who seems fairly toxic, and kind of dragging him down. It was just a great arc all around. Again, he was a surprise standout because Trish was likable season 1. I really didn't like Malcolm season 1. I loved him season 2. Now, Jessica's arc, I think, is great as well. We get these scenes of her at the support group. They weren't great, but I really liked, they're trying to drive home because sometimes you can forget. We see Jessica and her edginess and her banter, and it's fun to watch. We can forget that that's not healthy, and that's not really her. Deep down at a fundamental level, that's not her. And when she kills Kilgrave at the start of the episode, she's really hasn't changed at all. She's living the exact same life. It is a powerful message that revenge is not the answer, violence is not the answer. Those don't solve all your problems. So what does solve her problems? We see her have this relationship with her mom, and it's so sweet. At the end, the last thing her mom says to her, you know, you're better than me, you're a good person, fundamentally you're a good person deep down. Maybe that's all I needed to do in this world was create a good person like you. I didn't really have to be good myself. And it's something like that Jessica she wants to hear, and that's what she craves hearing, is just a mom or anybody just telling her, I love you, you're a good person fundamentally deep down. And again, compare that with Trish, who she would probably want to hear, you're great, you're special, you're awesome, Jessica just needs to hear that you're good and I love you and I value you. And then having her mom die and get shot, that was a high point again. And when I say this show kind of stuck the landing, I did think there were a few moments right towards the end of the last episode that stuck the landing and were good, and that was one of them. And I thought the ending was fantastic. I'm so glad they didn't end it with Jessica putting on a mask or saving someone, because that's not her. Like, for her, what her happiness and her fulfillment is just a normal life and being in a monogamous relationship with a good guy and maybe having a son. And you see that at the end. And it's so great to see, because what we see Jessica do, this kind of bitterness and this banter back and forth and casual sex, you know, banging that guy in the stall, that's fun to see and it's engaging, but that's not really her deep down. There are some people who they really are nihilists and they're bitter and they're happy with that, and they do like casual, meaningless sex with a bunch of different people, and that's their truth, and that's how they're most happy. But that's not Jessica's truth. That's not who she is deep down. That's a front that she's developed from severe trauma and abandonment issues and trauma in her past. So even though we might like to see this Jessica, if we actually care about her or we're a friend of her in real life, we would want her to change and actually be who she's actually meant to be at a deep level. And that's actually interesting for someone who's such a feminist icon and this great independent female badass woman. Her deepest desire deep down is fairly traditional and normal, what most of us really want and are happy with, which is, you know, a partner, kids, friends, a job, and just a normal, ordinary life. She's never desired to save the world, to be famous, to have fame. Those are the things that other people, you know, Trish might want. That's not what she wants. And what I loved is I feel like for Jessica, her biggest fear is that she's somehow deep down at a fundamental level broken. For Trish, it's being ordinary, not being special. For Jessica, she feels like she's broken in some sense, like she's a freak, she's evil, and you see that with Kilgrave taunting her in her hallucination. Now, with that as her biggest fear, imagine meeting your mother and seeing how your mother is a murderer and is violent and is weird and is not normal. That must have been so hard for her. So I just thought that was a fascinating element as well. Now, all of the prison scenes, the prison scene where her mother, Alyssa, was getting tortured by that guard, that was the one moment where I really felt like we were back in season 1 with that darkness and that dark mood and that mature theme. So that was great. The prison aesthetics of the prison and then her in the jumpsuit, those were some of the best aesthetics that I've seen. So again, it was just interesting. I love that, and it made me hopeful that maybe season 3 we could get back to that a bit. Maybe that it wasn't just a fluke and a one-off, that in season 1 we had this great dark vibe and feel. Maybe if things change a bit in season 3, we could get all the best elements of season 2. Again, this better characterization, I think, and these different characters getting fleshed out. Season 1, I never understood really who Trish was and what drove her. I never understood who Jessica was. I understood that Jessica was a survivor and had this front and this gruff exterior that she'd built up from trauma, but I didn't really understand what really drove her deep down. After season 2, I feel I have such a better idea of these characters. So it is exciting, because going into season 3, now that we've got this foundation, if they focused more on things like action sequences, paying some money to get some choreography, visuals, dialogue, there's so many things they could add now that we've got this good base, I think. So I am excited for season 3. And also, I'm so excited for Trish getting superpowers, being more of a character. I loved the little taste we've got of her. Now, she has good size as well and great acting. I love the dark scenes we get with her being a bit darker. So depending on what they do with her, but whatever they do with her, I think it's great. And I loved how the scenes we saw of her kickboxing against the bag in season 1, that just felt, to me, they were just kind of throwaways and I didn't pay too much attention of them. Now in season 2, when she's going through this transformation and you see her at the bag, it's this great callback, and really you see those earlier scenes in a whole new light. And then Jerry's storyline, I love what they did with it. So much better than season 1. Horrible divorce storyline in season 1. Here, first of all, you get some great scenes of her in her element, being a hard ass, being a great lawyer and attorney. I feel you only saw that in right at the end of season 1, you saw a little taste of that. Here, you get to see her really ruthless in her element, but then you see this whole life she's built for herself of being self-reliant, and this whole castle she's built, and then all it takes is her getting this ALS diagnosis. It's basically impossible to get through by yourself, and suddenly everything's changed, and I loved all of it. Even the bender she went on, I thought it was decent. I thought it was a good song choice. I didn't mind that. And then as she starts to form this relationship with this young thief, and really it's her arrogance and her prejudice that's her undoing, that she really can't see this person who she kind of feels above and superior to. She can't see her as the threat that she really is. And we get this great reversal of audience expectations where you think, oh, well, you kind of think you have an idea where the storyline's going. Jerry's going to be desperate and ruthless and is going to weasel out this cure from them and maybe even turn into a villain, and you think it's going one way, but then you just get the best reveal, which is that no, it was her getting played by these cons that she really should have seen coming. And then you've had that great reveal, and then she comes back to her house that she's talked about, how she just built it her whole life. It's her life work. She's sacrificed everything her whole life to have this wealth and these material things. And in that moment, I feel like it's not just that she had it taken away from her and she lost it, but she realized how fleeting what she had really was, and how anyone could just take it away, and how really paper thin what she had really was. I do feel like they did all this development, all this growth, and then all of a sudden, very quickly, she just kind of worked her way to back on top. So I didn't love how it ended. I feel like to some extent it felt like episodic, where it's like just kind of like, let's get back to where we are at the beginning, just in case there's another show and we need her. We can just kind of use her in the form she's always been. So I didn't love how they wrapped it up. I feel like they could have just wrapped it up with her losing all her possessions and kind of, again, yeah, I wish that sometimes we had better cliffhangers, maybe, because they know they're going to get another season, so I don't know why we don't get better cliffhangers and all these threads converging. But all in all, way better storyline than season 1. And it's funny when you see Jerry get her diagnosis and you see her wanting to take her own life to kind of reclaim a sense of control. And she says at one point, I'm not going to let this disease take the control away from me. I'm going to take it back. It's so similar to when Jessica's mom is in prison and this guard's trying to make her eat meat, and she's like, no one's going to control me. So different characters saying quotes about control at different times. Now, Kilgrave, so they bring him back as a hallucination. I really didn't like this, and this was one of my maybe least favorite things about the season, and one of the things I think was just so much better in season 1. Obviously, Kilgrave, top 3 villains easily. I think 3-way tie with him as best villain ever in these Marvel Netflix shows. So he was so great in season 1, and I feel like when they brought him back, not only did I not think it worked, but I feel like it weakened him a lot. In season 1, he was this predator and this abuser, and I feel like they brought him back as kind of this almost goofy, like devil on the shoulder hallucination that wasn't dark. I didn't feel the tone was dark. Like in season 1, Kilgrave was very menacing, and the things he would do, make people do, were just horrible. Some of the most shocking things I've seen on TV, and just again and again he would just shock you with his horrific acts. So he had this kind of British elegance and charm, but that was balanced with him actually doing these horrific things and being this horrific predator. Now you had the same charm, the same wit, the same banter, but he was just a hallucination and there was no real teeth. And I feel like it just weakened it for me, just having him be this kind of, almost this part of Jessica, almost this kind of manifestation of her own dark side and her own potential for darkness, rather than a real flesh and blood abuser and predator. I did feel like he weakened it. He was weakened for me, and I feel like it was bad fan service. I feel like he was brought in kind of just to be like, oh, he's coming back for season 2. Everyone who likes this actor, come tune in. Everyone who liked him in season 1, come back in and watch our show, rather than actually, is this a good thing for the development of our characters, and is it a good thing for our understanding of the characterization? No. Okay, so I'm going to end the video there. I'm really tired. I'm going to go to bed. Last thing I'll say, Price, his character, we didn't see much of him, but even his character, we saw enough that I liked him. I want to see more. I'm excited to see more of him next season, and I feel like that best encapsulates, I gotta go to bed, just why I would say this is better than season 1, because season 1, it was great and you had these great moments, but it was a lot of it felt like you were just, oh, how is Kilgrave gonna kill someone next? What brutal way is he gonna kill someone next? What kind of cool use of his powers are we gonna see? What classic British elegance and wit are we gonna hear from him next? Here it feels like now they actually were doing the work of building a successful TV show where you have different characters that you understand and you know their motivations and you're interested to see what they do in different situations. You start to have arcs and you start to have growth. This is where I feel like it started to, they really, maybe even you could say this wasn't as entertaining a season, it wasn't as good, but I feel like they did way more work to build a successful franchise that we're going to see season after season after season of quality TV. So that's the main reason why I'd say this is better than season 1.